I used to believe that true love could overcome anything, even the poorest, hardest of days, until the moment I stood frozen, watching her step into my boss's car, not once looking back, as if everything we shared had never existed. That day was bitterly cold. New York felt like it had frozen over completely. Wind screamed through alleyways, slicing through even the thickest coats. The streets were buried beneath a fresh layer of snow, and Ryan, a pizza delivery guy, could barely feel his hands. He had just finished his last delivery shift of the day, a late-night order all the way out in Harlem. Far inconvenient and barely worth the tip, but Ryan took it anyway because every dollar mattered. It was the only way he and his girlfriend Emily could afford to keep the heat running in their tiny apartment. On the way home, Ryan allowed himself a small dream, a quiet dinner with the woman he loved, maybe some cold pasta, the warm glow of a bedside lamp, the faint scent of Emily's perfume lingering in the room. That was enough. He pictured her curled up in a blanket, reading a novel, looking up to smile at him as he walked through the door. Reality, however, had other plans. When Ryan pushed open a worn wooden door to their third-floor apartment, the winter air hadn't even left his coat before another kind of cold, sharp and silent hit him straight in the chest. Emily was packing her bags. She was kneeling beside a sleek Louis Vuitton suitcase by the door, her hands quickly folding clothes and carefully tucking away makeup items. It was obvious this had been planned. Ryan froze. Then, softly, "Where you going?" His voice trembled, not just from the cold. Emily turned. Her gaze met his, steady, unwavering. There was no warmth in her eyes, no trace of the softness he once knew, just quiet certainty, the kind that follows a long-made decision. "I can't keep living like this, Ryan." The words didn't explode. They simply landed, with quiet finality. Ryan didn't ask for more. He didn't need to. Everything was written there, in the zipped suitcase, the faint hum of an engine outside, and the lack of hesitation in her tone. He walked to the window. Outside, a sleek black Mercedes sat beneath the streetlight, its engine idling. In the back seat sat Mark Evans, Emily's boss, the CEO of the high-powered law firm where she worked as a secretary, a man Ryan had once awkwardly shaken hands with at a company Christmas party, who smiled politely but never really looked at him. He glanced back at Emily. She was zipping up the suitcase now, like someone leaving for a trip, not someone leaving a life. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She hesitated, just for a moment, then answered almost gently, "Since the night you came home with takeout noodles, instead of tickets to the symphony." Ryan nodded. No anger, no plea, just the quiet resignation of someone who finally understands. Love isn't always enough to make someone stay. Emily opened the door. The winter wind rushed in, shaking the overhead light. She stepped out without hesitation, the suitcase wheels clattering over the worn wood floor. Ryan stood in the doorway, motionless, like a statue caught in a storm. She climbed into the car. She didn't look back, not even once. The Mercedes pulled away slowly, leaving twin tire tracks in snow like scars etched into the night. Ryan stood there still. In his hands was a warm pizza box. But in his chest, there was nothing but emptiness, a hollow colder than anything winter could ever bring. He knelt down and set the pizza on the floor. The apartment, already small, suddenly felt cavernous, silent, foreign. Emily's things were still everywhere. Her Chanel perfume bottle on the vanity, her fuzzy slippers slightly askew under the couch, a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Buy more eggs and butter, little ghosts," still clinging to the room. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat there for a long time, as if, by sitting still enough, time might rewind. But it didn't. Time only moved forward, cold and unforgiving. Eventually, Ryan stood. He turned on the heater, took off his coat, and placed a pizza in the fridge. There was no one left to text goodnight. That night, the snow fell heavier. But inside that tiny apartment, the deepest chill wasn't from the weather. It was from the silence that followed goodbye. It took Ryan more than a year after Emily left to realize one simple but bitter truth. Love alone isn't enough to make someone stay. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, it still won't be enough. Some people, some dreams will leave you, not because you didn't care, but because in one fleeting moment of life, you simply weren't enough of the version of them they imagined. In the days after their breakup, Ryan's life felt drained of all color. Each morning began with a migraine from sleepless nights and ended in silence at the edge of his old bed. He barely recognized the man in the mirror anymore. Sunken eyes, scruffy chin, hollow cheeks from too many nights without rest. Time didn't pass by the ticking of the clock, but by the lonely rhythm of his heartbeat, the sound of doors closing after each shift, and the lingering smell of grease in his hair from late-night dishwashing. Ryan took any job he could find. Delivering food on a bike through New York's winter, wiping tables at a fast food joint, scrubbing public bathrooms no one dared to look at twice. He became invisible in a crowded city, only seen when needed and forgotten the moment he wasn't. One night, at 2 a.m., Ryan stood alone in a train station restroom, staring into a cracked mirror under flickering neon lights. He looked deep into his own eyes and, for the first time in his life, saw nothing. No dreams, no love, no hope, just a single echoing question in the pit of his soul. Where did I go wrong? And then fate stepped in with a man named Liam. It was a cold, late winter evening when Ryan ducked into a small corner store to catch his breath between deliveries. That's where he saw him, a homeless man with wild silver hair and a warm, gentle smile. Liam sat hunched in a torn coat, his eyes sparkling like someone who had seen the whole world and somehow learned to smile at it. Ryan didn't have much, but he still had a warm chicken sandwich in his pocket. Without thinking, he handed it over. Liam took it with a grateful glimmer in his eyes, the street lamp casting soft shadows across his weathered face. "You know," Liam said between bites, "you're richer than most of those folks with money out there, because even when you have nothing, you still choose to give." That simple sentence, so quietly powerful, struck Ryan like a match in a room left dark for too long. It didn't chase the shadows away immediately, but it reminded him he still had a choice, not to become bitter. That night, Ryan didn't sleep. He sat on the balcony of his tiny rented room, watching the city lights flicker through dusty glass. And for the first time in a long while, he began to think about something lasting. Since he was a kid, Ryan had loved technology. But without resources, that passion had only taken him as far as window shopping through electronic stores, gazing at computers he couldn't afford. Now he decided to try again. With no money for school, he searched the internet for free courses. He scraped together his last savings to buy an old laptop. The screen had a black spot in the corner, one key didn't work, and the battery was so weak it had to stay plugged in constantly. By day, Ryan still delivered orders. By night, he taught himself to code. Some nights he'd fall asleep mid-lesson, the mouse slipping from his hand. Other nights, he'd spend hours debugging a simple calculator program until sunrise. But every time the code finally worked, he'd smile to himself like a child. No one believed in his dream. Some even mocked him. Try to be a tech billionaire while still wearing that stinky delivery helmet? But Ryan never answered. He just kept his head down and kept writing, line by line, night by night. Ryan didn't start with anything grand. With an old, overheating laptop, an unstable Wi-Fi connection, and a makeshift workspace on the floor next to his kitchen, he began building simple apps, ones that reflected his reality. His first app was a tip calculator for drivers and delivery workers, those hustling through long days, surviving on the loose change left behind by customers. It wasn't flashy, just a plain white interface with few input boxes, order amount, desired tip percentage, and a result displayed instantly. But for Ryan, it was the first thing he created entirely on his own. No help, no copying, just his hands, his code. Next came a meal reminder app for night shift workers. He thought of his former co-workers, those who ate at 2 a.m. and nodded off on buses home. The app wouldn't fix their health, but at the very least, it reminded them that their bodies mattered too. A small chime in the middle of the night nudged them. It's time to stop, sip some water, eat the leftovers you packed hours ago. Then came a budgeting tool designed for people who couldn't afford financial advisors or use premium banking apps. People living paycheck to paycheck, just like he once had. The app broke down spending into simple categories: rent, utilities, food, transportation. As users enter expenses, the color would slowly shift from green to red, a gentle warning, not a judgment. Every time he finished an app, Ryan brought it into the light, even if that light was just a faint glow from online developer forums. He posted on Reddit, GitHub, Medium, and small Facebook groups for freelancers, not to chase praise, but to listen. The initial feedback was sparse. Sometimes, days passed without a single reply, but every so often, a comment would appear. I use this every day. Thank you. I work the night shift at a hospital. Your app helps me remember to eat. It's a small app, but really useful. Please keep building. Just a few words like that were enough to keep him awake through the night. He did have impressive download stats. No media coverage. No top search results. But each download, each returning user, was proof that he wasn't invisible. He was moving in the right direction. Slowly but surely, every night, after long shifts, Ryan would return to his tiny rented room, power up his laptop, open the code editor, and continue. The first line of code was often shaky from cold fingers. The last line usually trailed off as he fell asleep at the desk. But between those two lines, he was building an entire world, one shaped by the cracks and bruises of his own life. He didn't build apps for the wealthy. He didn't code to impress. He built because he knew there were people out there just like him, quietly trying, day after day, needing just one small tool to make life a little less heavy in this unforgiving world. 3 years later, Arise Tech officially came to life. There was no grand launch, no press coverage or media buzz. It began quietly, just like the way Ryan had lived those past 3 years, persistently and silently. Arise Tech was a mobile app distribution platform built specifically for independent developers, those without degrees, without connections, but full of passion and perseverance. From idea to product, Ryan carried the entire load himself, coding, designing, fixing bugs, replying to users. There were nights he stayed up until dawn just to fix a small display glitch on an outdated phone model. But to him, every single piece of feedback was worth a sleepless night. He didn't run ads or push marketing campaigns. He simply shared his work on small online forums. At first, no one paid attention. But slowly, people like him, unknown, self-taught developers, started to take notice. They sent messages of thanks, offered suggestions, and began sharing his work. Arise Tech started to gain real users. One day, an unfamiliar email appeared in his inbox. It was from a venture capital firm. They had quietly followed Ryan's posts, watched how he interacted with his community. They wanted to meet. The meeting happened over Zoom. Ryan wore the only dress shirt he had left in good condition and borrowed a blazer from an old friend. He didn't give a flashy pitch. He simply told the truth about his journey, about Liam, and about why he was doing all of this. 3 weeks later, Arise Tech received a $1 million investment. There were no claps, no champagne toasts, just Ryan alone, sitting in his first rented office space, formerly a rundown woodworking shop. The ceiling still stained, the light flickering. He played an old song, one Emily used to love. It made his chest tighten, but this time, the pain passed like a cold breeze at the turn of season. Arise Tech didn't make him rich, but it helped him rebuild himself and create opportunities for those who had once been left behind, just like he was. He hired the rejected. He went to underfunded schools to share tech skills. He built a kind, inclusive community. When Liam, the homeless man whose words had changed Ryan's life, passed away, Ryan stood quietly at the back of the funeral. He didn't speak. He didn't let anyone know who he was. Later, with the company's first profits, he started a fund called Keep Giving to offer second chances to those like Liam. On the homepage of Arise Tech, there's only a small line of text. For Liam, the first person who believed in me when I had nothing left to believe in. The day Arise Tech was named one of the 10 fastest growing tech startups on the East Coast, the news appeared in an industry magazine under a modest headline, From Pizza Delivery to $1 Million CEO. The article spread quickly, as if Ryan's story was a quiet rebuttal to everyone who had ever believed that humble beginnings meant you couldn't reach for something greater. A few days later, while Ryan was checking his inbox over a morning coffee at the office, one name stood out among the hundreds of project updates and partnership requests. Emily. The subject line was plain, no exclamation marks, no bold text. From Emily. Hi, Ryan. I read the news about you. I truly admire you, and I'm happy for you. I don't know if it's too late to ask this, but would you be willing to meet? Ryan sat still in front of the screen for a few moments. There was no anger, no sharp flash of memory, just a quiet space, as if the old story hadn't ended, only turned to a new page. He typed his reply. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., cafe on the Brooklyn corner. If you come. The next day, a gentle rain fell. Tiny droplets clung to the foggy window panes of an old cafe tucked quietly on a Brooklyn street corner. The place looked just as it did years ago. Dark wooden facade, steamed up glass, soft jazz humming from a speaker near the ceiling, as if time had skipped past this little pocket of the world. Emily had been there early, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that still steamed slightly, though the warmth had long since left her. Her gaze drifted beyond the glass to the rush of colorful umbrellas passing in the drizzle. Her hair was no longer as vibrant, its ends dry, faintly graying, and her eyes, once sharp with ambition and confidence, now held a quiet weariness. Touched by something that resembled regret, she heard the door chime softly. Ryan stepped inside, wearing a dark overcoat. He looked taller than before, his shoulders broader, more grounded, but his eyes remained calm, like the last time she saw him. She looked up and offered a faint smile, half reflex, half reaching back for a memory already faded. She wasn't sure if she was smiling at the Ryan in front of her, or the one who once stood in the snow, holding a warm box of pizza. Hi, she said, voice slightly trembling, as if confessing to years of silence. Ryan didn't answer right away. He pulled out a chair and sat down, his eyes resting on the face before him. It wasn't the look of someone digging for old wounds, but of someone trying to understand, not to blame, but to see things clearly. A long silence settled between them, filled only by the low music and the soft rhythm of rain tapping on the windows. Mark left me, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking more to herself. His company went under. Everything collapsed faster than I ever imagined. I lost it all. Not just the money, I lost who I was. She bit her lip, gripping the warm cold cup like a fragile anchor. I'm not here to ask for money or pity. I just wanted to ask if maybe we could start over. Again, Ryan said nothing. He didn't flinch. He didn't seem surprised. In his eyes, there was no resentment, no bitterness, only a quiet peace. The kind of peace earned by walking through pain and learning how to let go. He looked at Emily for a long moment, not as someone he had once loved and been left by, but as a person who had made their choices, some wrong, and now sat here, hoping for someone they once turned away from. I used to think, Ryan said softly, his voice steady and low, that if you hadn't left, I'd probably still be delivering pizzas. I wouldn't have learned to code. I wouldn't have met Liam. I wouldn't have known what it meant to stand up on my own. He let out a breath, not a sigh of exhaustion, but the quiet release of a memory that had been folded away by time. And maybe, he continued, I'd still be chasing after you, instead of ever turning around to find myself. Emily said nothing. She bit her lip harder. Her face didn't crumble. There were no tears, but her eyes, once more, seemed distant, empty. Ryan stood up. The chair beneath him made a soft scrape against the old wooden floor. The coffee in front of him was still more than half full, long cold, but it no longer mattered. Thank you, he said gently, like a farewell, for leaving. Because of you, I learned how to stay with myself. He turned, hands tucked into his coat pockets, and walked out. He didn't look back. Outside, the rain kept falling. Not hard, not heavy. Just a quiet curtain of mist washing over an old chapter. Ryan didn't use an umbrella. His head bowed slightly, his steps steady. He wasn't just walking out of a cafe, or away from someone who once meant the world. He was stepping out of a past he'd finally learned to close. And in every cold drop clinging to his coat, he felt something lift. For the first time in years, Ryan felt truly free. Some goodbyes in life aren't endings. They are fate's quiet way of opening a new door, one where the light is no longer blurred by the shadows of the past. Some people don't leave because they're bad. They leave because their part in your story ends exactly where it's meant to. And if you're brave enough to let go, you'll come to realize the loss was a gift wrapped in pain. Ryan once believed that strength meant never breaking, never letting anyone see you hurt. But now he understands. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising again when no one is watching. It's about continuing forward, even when no one believes you can. Life isn't always fair, but it's always real. And those who stay with themselves, who survive the silent days no one ever sees, are the ones who end up rewriting their story, slowly but deeply, simply but with quiet pride. If you've stayed until this moment, through the story of someone who was once left behind in winter, but chose not to stand still, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sitting with me in the quiet moments. Thank you for staying long enough to hear the whole journey. And if you find yourself in the darkest part of your life, sitting alone, with no applause, no one waiting at the finish line, remember this. The greatest stage in life has no audience. It's just you and the faint light from whatever faith you still carry inside. And maybe, just maybe, like Ryan, the moment you feel most abandoned is the moment you're being handed the chance to finally find yourself,